Well, thank you. I'm interested in a couple of things. First of all, I'm concerned that we are, and frankly, the bill was written this way, so it is no fault of any of yours here, but my concern is that we have the mapping that is required to see where the real priorities in America are for not having broadband and where it's most needed or most underserved area. And yet the funding has to start before the mapping is finished. And it seems like, I understand that this was a stimulus package and it was supposed to be stimulative, but I also am concerned that we're not going to be using the right priorities for the taxpayer dollars that we, if we don't have the mapping first. So can you answer for me, either Mr. Strickling or Mr. Adelstein, if that is a valid concern, and if there is any, do you have anything preliminary that gives you a priority, or are you just looking at grants and making these decisions based on the grant request rather than our information about what the priorities are?
I'll speak first. At NTIA, we are not relying solely on the information the applicant provides us. You are correct that the National Broadband Map is not scheduled to be completed until 2011. Our goal is to make sure that the money is spent wisely, and at least for the infrastructure projects, our focus is on unserved and underserved areas. We do not need a national broadband map to make that evaluation. We do have other sources of information, and let me enumerate them for you. First, we do have the information that each applicant has supplied with its application in terms of the census blocks and their proposed service area, and they characterize it with whatever data they have as unserved or underserved. In addition to that, the states, some have already done their own mapping projects, so we have access to that information. In addition, we invited every state to provide us input as to what they viewed as their priority areas within the state. This is not an actual mapping tool, but it allows each state to provide input, and each state, in fact, has provided that input to tell us that a particular part of a state is an area of particular need and interest for them, so we have that information. In addition, there is a process underway that will conclude tomorrow, I believe, where existing service providers, if they're not the applicant in a given location, may provide very specific information to us in terms of the availability and the subscribership for broadband services in an area. So if we take all of that information together, I think we have a pretty good picture for the particular applications we're looking at as to whether or not they are truly unserved or underserved, or whether or not they're within the priority areas identified by the state. You are right that in a perfect world, if we had the map, our task would be simpler, but I don't think we are in any way thwarted from carrying out the legislative goals with the information we do have.
Did you have anything to add?
Just that, yeah, I think you're right. Ideally, we would have the maps first, but given, as you also indicated, this is a stimulus package, the need to urgently get the jobs back in America, we needed to move forward, and we're using all the tools at our disposal to try to target those funds, as you indicated in your opening statement, toward the areas that are unserved first, areas that don't have any service at all. And we are having to basically look application by application to determine if those areas are in fact unserved. Looking at our own due diligence, we've gone into the areas where we're looking at applications to see if in fact, if they say they're unserved, if they are, looking at all the other tools that are available with state broadband data, with FCC data, other data that we can use.
Let me just ask you also quickly, the volunteer program that is being utilized, can you describe how you use the volunteers and how you assure that the agency personnel are following up or making a decision based on more information perhaps than the volunteers could provide, or just how is that working? Because it's a little bit of a concern. Maybe it's not warranted, but why don't you describe how you're using 1,100 volunteers, is that correct?
Approximately 1,100, that's correct. And I prefer to refer to them as independent experts, but yes, they are volunteering their time, and we thank them for stepping
Do
up.
they have qualifications that you consider?
They do. Each person who offered their services, and I have to emphasize that these include executives from telecommunications companies. In one case, I know we have the former chair of a state public utility commission who is participating. We have very well-known academics who are participating. So these are very expert people who are participating in this program. But nonetheless, for the entire pool, each person had to submit their credentials in the form of a resume. Each person also had to provide a conflict of interest certification to us to ensure that we don't have issues of people working on applications, but then also seeking to evaluate other applications. So everybody was screened. I think, as I remember the numbers, we have about 1,100 who have come through the process. At least 200 or 300 were rejected, either for conflict of interest or for lack of qualification. So I think that shows the seriousness with which we took the obligation to vet these people before we send applications to them. I also want to emphasize that their role is the first round screener. In other words, they are not making determinations or selecting applications for funding. What they're helping us to do is to identify the cream of the application pool. With 7 times oversubscription, there are going to be very good applications that do not get funded out of this program with the dollars we have available to us. I view my mission, and I remind our staff constantly that our mission is to make sure we don't fund any bad applications. And in that sense, in that context, if you understand what the reviewers are doing is really letting us focus in on that part of the application pool that offers the greatest potential to provide the greatest benefits. We then do a top-to-bottom scrub in due diligence of these applications and make the real determinations. Is this project sustainable? Is the budget reasonable? Do these people have a track record that demonstrates they can build this project? What are the benefits that are going to happen? So we're making independent evaluations for those projects that pass through to due diligence to ensure that when we pick a project for funding, it will be a quality and successful project.
Thank you. Thank you very much.